Your person is not who you assume them to be. And one day, when the truth finally breaks through the surface, it will not arrive gently. It will not give you time to prepare. It will hit you in the middle of an ordinary moment, while you are washing dishes, or sitting in traffic, or laughing at something completely unrelated, and the weight of it will feel so enormous that your chest will physically ache. It will feel as though your entire soul has been torn apart from the inside, quietly and completely, by someone who once promised to protect it. The most painful thing about betrayal is never the lies themselves. Lies are just words. What destroys you is the trust that lived underneath them. The fact that you gave someone access to the most honest, unguarded version of yourself. You opened doors inside you that had been locked for years, sometimes for reasons you never fully explained even to yourself, and you handed them the key without hesitation because something about the way they looked at you made you believe it was finally safe. You defended them when other people raised their eyebrows. You made excuses for their behavior in conversations where others saw clearly what you refused to see. You reinterpreted every red flag with the generous vocabulary of someone deeply in love. Their silence was peace, their distance was stress, their coldness was temporary, their inconsistency was just life getting in the way. You told yourself that love required patience. That real connection asked you to remain even when things felt uncertain. But deep down, beneath all the rationalizing and the hoping and the careful reframing, your soul always knew. There were moments, quiet and fleeting, when your heart felt uneasy for reasons you could not name. Moments when their words stopped matching the energy behind their eyes. Moments when their promises arrived too quickly, too perfectly, landing exactly where your wounds were deepest, as though they had studied the map of your pain and learned precisely how to speak to it. Moments when you felt profoundly lonely while sitting right beside them, close enough to touch, and that loneliness frightened you in a way that ordinary solitude never had. You felt it. Your body knew before your mind was willing to accept it. But you stayed, not because you were foolish, and not because you were weak, but because you had fallen in love with the version of them that they showed you at the very beginning, and that version was extraordinary. That is the cruelest part of this kind of pain. You are not grieving a lie from the start. You are grieving something that felt completely real, something that lit you up and made the world feel larger and softer, something that seemed to arrive like an answer to a question you had been carrying alone for years. You are grieving a person who may have actually existed, at least partially, at least for a while, before something shifted and they slowly began choosing differently. And you cannot quite let go of that original version because it was not a performance you saw through immediately. It moved you. It changed you. It made you believe. Sometimes people introduce you to a person they never truly intended to remain. At first, they love you loudly. They pursue you with a kind of energy that feels rare, that feels chosen and deliberate. They show up. They remember the small things. They send messages that make you smile at your phone in the middle of the afternoon. They look at you in a way that makes you feel like the most interesting person in any room. They make you feel chosen, not out of convenience, not out of habit, but specifically and intentionally chosen, as though out of everyone they could have turned toward, they turn toward you. And because your heart is pure, because you have spent years hoping for this particular feeling, you receive it fully. You let it in. You begin to trust it. They study your wounds, whether consciously or not, and learn exactly how to become your comfort. They say the right things at the right moments. They offer the kind of gentleness that maps perfectly onto the places inside you that have never quite healed. They say forever with eyes that seem so honest you would testify to that honesty in front of anyone who questioned it. And slowly, almost without realizing it is happening, you begin organizing your life around them. You start building dreams with them woven into every corner. You picture what mornings would look like beside them years from now. You imagine what it would feel like to stop carrying certain things alone, to have someone steady beside you when everything else is uncertain. You imagine healing happening not as a solo journey but as a shared one. You start handing them the fragile parts of yourself, the broken pieces, the fears you buried carefully because not everyone deserves to know where your vulnerabilities live. You tell them things you have never told anyone else, not because you plan to, but because being around them made honesty feel less dangerous than it ever had before. They hold those revelations gently. They respond with warmth. And you take that warmth as evidence of their character, as proof that what you have built together is real and durable and worth everything you are putting into it. But people change when they stop valuing your heart. It happens gradually enough that you almost miss it. The calls become a little shorter, a little less present. The effort that once seemed effortless begins to require visible work, and then eventually it disappears entirely. Their affection starts to carry a mechanical quality, as though it is being performed rather than felt. You begin noticing that they seem most loving when they want something, when the mood is convenient, when it costs them nothing. And very quietly, almost imperceptibly at first, you realize you have become the one carrying the relationship forward. You are the one initiating contact, the one checking in, the one reaching across the growing distance with words that used to come naturally from both directions. You start overthinking everything, every change in their tone, every delayed response, every interaction that ends a little too abruptly. You replay conversations searching for what you might have said or done to cause this shift. You wonder if you are imagining it. You question your own perception with such regularity that you begin to lose confidence in your ability to read situations clearly. You beg, not with explicit words but with your energy, with the way you soften yourself to avoid conflict, with the way you accept less because accepting feels safer than the alternative conversation. You are working tirelessly to save something while the other person has already emotionally packed their things and started walking toward the door. And when that realization arrives, it does not arrive cleanly. It does not come with the mercy of a clear ending. It seeps in through the cracks of 100 small moments until one day you are sitting somewhere ordinary and it washes over you completely. The person you were fighting so hard to hold onto was never fully yours to begin with. The version you loved, the one you sacrificed your peace for, existed only in moments. Perhaps even in strategy. Perhaps they loved the feeling of being adored more. Then they loved you as a specific, irreplaceable person. Perhaps they loved being needed. Perhaps they loved having somewhere warm and loyal to return to while quietly entertaining a version of their life that never truly included you at its center. The truth shatters you, not because they left, but because of everything that happened before they left. Because you stayed faithful to someone who was growing cold. Because you kept choosing them on days when they were barely choosing you. Because you watched them become a stranger while telling yourself it was temporary, while assuring yourself that the person you fell for was still in there somewhere, obscured by stress or circumstance, not gone permanently. You replay everything. Every memory gets held up to the light and examined from a new angle. You wonder which moments were genuine and which were performance. You wonder if the laughter was real, if the tenderness was calculated, if the words that moved you most were selected precisely because they knew how badly you needed to hear them. You question your own judgment in a way that follows you into other areas of your life, making you doubt your instincts, making you wonder how you could have missed something so significant for so long. And that self-doubt, more than the loss itself, is what changes you. It teaches you something devastating and necessary at the same time. Not everyone who says they love you actually understands what love requires of them. Some people love what you provide. Some people love the reflection of themselves they see in your admiration. Some people love being chosen, but they do not know how to honor the responsibility that comes with being chosen. They accept your loyalty without offering their own. They accept your honesty while guarding their truth carefully. They let you believe in something that was always slightly less solid than it appeared, and they allow that belief to serve them for as long as it remains convenient. The cruelest part of fake love is that it rarely looks fake at the beginning. It does not announce itself with coldness or carelessness. It arrives wrapped in intensity, in excitement, in the kind of emotional charge that makes you feel more alive than you have in years. It is addictive precisely because it targets the parts of you that have been most hungry. It gives you the emotional experience of being deeply seen and chosen and valued, and your nervous system responds to that experience regardless of whether the foundation beneath it is honest. You feel it fully. You live inside it completely. And when it begins to erode, you spend enormous amounts of energy trying to return to the feeling rather than examining the structure that was always holding it up. Real love does not operate this way. Real love does not keep you in a constant state of uncertainty about where you stand. It does not require you to audition repeatedly for a role you thought you had already been given. It does not arrive loudly and then slowly go quiet, leaving you to wonder what changed and whether it was something you did. Real love is not the absence of difficulty, it is the presence of genuine commitment even within difficulty. It is someone choosing to be honest with you when honesty is uncomfortable. It is someone staying accountable when it would be easier to deflect. It is someone who, even on the days when love requires work, shows up and does the work willingly. Love should feel like safety, not performance, not survival. Yet so many people remain inside painful relationships long past the point where their own heart has started warning them to leave, and the reason is rarely weakness. It is hope. It is the memory of the person from the beginning, held like a photograph that is slowly losing its color, and the deep, stubborn belief that if you love them carefully enough, patiently enough, generously enough, that person will come back. You fall in love with potential rather than with consistent reality. You fall in love with the version of them that existed for a season and hold on to it through every season that follows, even when the evidence of who they have become is impossible to ignore. And sometimes, closure never arrives. Sometimes the people who alter you most profoundly are the ones who walk away without explanation, without the conversation you deserved, without the acknowledgement of what they took from you. They move forward with a speed that bewilders you, returning to their life while you are left standing somewhere between who you were before them and who you are supposed to become next. They sleep easily while you lie awake replaying everything you should have noticed, everything you should have said, every moment that now looks completely different in retrospect. That grief is its own specific kind of unbearable. It is not just the grief of losing a person. It is the grief of losing the future you had begun building in your imagination. The grief of all the versions of yourself you handed over and will now need to slowly reclaim. The grief of realizing that the safety you felt was not as solid as it seemed, and that this discovery makes the world feel slightly less trustworthy than it did before. But then something changes. It does not happen dramatically. It does not arrive as a sudden revelation. It moves quietly, almost reluctantly, like light returning to a room after a long winter. One day you notice that you have gone several hours without thinking about them. Another day you catch yourself laughing at something without the laughter being immediately followed by sadness. Small shifts, accumulating. Your nervous system slowly learning that it is allowed to rest. And as you begin emerging from the fog of it, you start seeing things with a clarity that was not available to you when you were inside it. You begin to understand how much of yourself you abandoned in the process of holding onto them. How often you ignored your own needs to accommodate theirs. How much of your intuition you silenced because listening to it would have required you to accept something you were not ready to accept. You see how you made yourself smaller in moments where you deserved to take up space. How you tolerated things that contradicted your values because the alternative, acknowledging that this relationship was not what you needed it to be, felt too enormous to face. And in that clarity, something important begins to solidify. You stop being willing to settle for love that only shows up partially. You stop romanticizing the bare minimum. You stop misreading crumbs of affection as evidence of a feast. You begin understanding, at a level that goes deeper than intellectual agreement, that you deserve consistency. That you deserve someone who finds it natural to prioritize you. That you deserve honesty delivered with care, not silence offered as a substitute for difficult conversation. That you deserve to feel secure in love without having to manufacture that security yourself every single day. Healing is not linear. It would be dishonest to suggest otherwise. There are days when you feel genuinely rebuilt, when the future looks open and interesting and yours. And there are days when a song plays unexpectedly, or you pass somewhere that holds a particular memory, or a certain quality of light in the late afternoon reminds you of something small and specific, and the grief returns with a force that surprises you. You think you have put something down for good and then you find it in your hands again, heavier than you remembered. That does not mean you are failing at healing. It means healing is honest. It follows no clean schedule. It asks only that you remain willing to keep moving through it even on the days when moving through it feels like the hardest thing you have ever been asked to do. But you do move through it. Slowly, imperfectly, and with far more grace than you give yourself credit for, you move through it. And on the other side of it, you find something unexpected, a version of yourself that is more self-aware than the person who entered that relationship. A person who knows their own worth not as an idea but as a lived, felt truth. A person who has learned to trust their instincts again, more carefully this time, with both openness and discernment held together. A person who understands that love is not supposed to cost you your peace, your identity, or your dignity. A person who can recognize the difference between real intimacy and the performance of it, not because they are cynical, but because they have paid the tuition that kind of knowledge requires. The right person, when they come, will not need you to compete for their attention. They will not create situations where your worth feels perpetually uncertain. They will not ask you to earn their consistency or audition for their loyalty. They will not confuse you with the gap between what they say and what they do. They will show up not just on the days when it is easy but on the days when it requires something from them. They will make love feel less like a performance you sustain through constant effort and more like something you inhabit together, naturally, without the anxiety of wondering when it will be withdrawn. Because this heartbreak, as devastating as it has been, was not simply loss. It was also instruction. It clarified what you need at a depth that only lived experience can reach. It removed something that was not capable of growing into what you were praying for, even if it looked, for a while, like it might. It returned you to yourself, changed and tender and more honest about your own needs than you have ever been. Sometimes heartbreak is not punishment. Sometimes it is the universe insisting that you not spend your one life building a home inside someone who was never going to stay. One day, perhaps not soon, but one day. With certainty, you will look back at this pain without being destroyed by the looking. You will see what it taught you. You will recognize what it protected you from. You will understand that being alone in your integrity is 1,000 times less painful than being beside someone and feeling completely invisible. You will stop grieving the illusion and feel, perhaps even with some gentleness, grateful for the truth. Because the truth, no matter how violently it arrived, gave you back something essential. It gave you back yourself. And you will begin again. Not hardened. Not closed. but wiser, more grounded, more certain of what you will accept and what you will quietly, respectfully, permanently walk away from. Your person is not who you assumed them to be. Their betrayal does not get to be the final word on who you are or what you deserve. It was never the end of your story. It was the beginning of your awakening.